I know I titled this video How to Run Phandelver and Below, but it's not quite that. I'm sure, like most of us who play 5th edition, well, and now 2025, 2024, whatever they're calling it now, which I will put out a video on my opinions on the updated rule books at some point. Here's a little teaser. I don't hate them. I know a lot of people complain about them, but, you know, complaining gets likes. As I was saying, like most people who play 5th edition, one of the very first adventures I played in was Lost Mine of Phandelver, and I loved it. I loved it because it brought me back to that pure sense of exploration and role-playing and combat that I fell in love with originally. You know, it's a little it's not really sandboxy, but it pretends to be, but it really helps give that illusion of an open world. Very simple story, very simple side quests. Overall, just a really basic but well put together adventure. I know for a lot of people it's one of their favorites in 5th edition. So when I saw Phandelver and Below, I got excited. I was like, wow, they're going to expand something that I already love. This is great. Hopefully I don't mess it up. I bought it on D&D Beyond, started prepping, session 0, let my players know what we're going to be playing. After I prepped the beginning, the Lost Mine section, I got to the later part, and oh my god, it is awful. Maybe if you really like very, very loosely put together storyline with plot points that don't make any sense, no real good reason for any of this stuff to be happening, it's just a very weak narrative. You feel like the floor is going to fall right out from underneath you the whole time you're reading through it. I was like, okay, maybe I can fix it. Maybe there's something I can do. And there's probably people out there that can fix it. And I would definitely recommend watching some of those videos. For me, it was just a hot pile of garbage. And no offense to the writers. I know that was a challenge. I'm not trying to take a steaming one on your work. It feels very forced, very rushed, and no one really wants to be in a dungeon that long, or at least no one I know wants to be in a dungeon that long, and it's just dungeon after dungeon after dungeon with no real other types of encounters, no real drive to the story. There's nothing that makes me want to turn to the next page, therefore there's nothing that's going to make my players want to keep playing that adventure. Nothing. It's boring. There's some interesting dungeons that you could pull out, but to have them one after another, and then it all climaxes in a dungeon in another realm of existence. While some of the aesthetics of these dungeons are interesting later on, it's still, you get stuck in that same feeling. There's no variety. It's like if you just took Princes of the Apocalypse and smacked it right at the end of Lost Mine. It has as much narrative cross-connecting tissue as well. So it's not for me. It's not for my players. I know they would hate it. I mean, we had a hard time. I was playing, I wasn't running the game, but as a group, we had a hard time making it through Mad Mage, and this is like Mad Mage, but not interesting as a whole. And Mad Mage has some elements that help you get through it. This has none of that. This is just like, hey, here's a thing that we kind of connected to the other thing, but maybe if you fart halfway through the session, your players won't know that you're just giving them the same carbon copied bullshit. Now I'm struggling. I don't want to run this anymore. I already told my players what we were doing, and now I'm like, well, damn, now I have to run them through this, and everybody's going to be miserable, and I'm going to look like a dick because I made them run this. I was trying to figure out how can I breathe life into this, and I was watching some YouTube videos, and there's this old campaign or this old module that comes up. It was one that I've always kind of wanted to run, so I put it on and I'm watching through it. I'm like, this is badass. I want this in that game. So then I got to thinking, well, I mean, it's for 3.5. How am I going to convert it? And then the more I looked into it, you don't really need to convert it. Find things that are similar, builds, whatever it says the class is, build a character of that class, and that's your conversion. You get roughly the same level. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's not a balanced adventure anyway. If it's something where you need a little more balance, yeah, you might want to research a little bit more, but I'm only looking for the narrative, the story, and like the different systems that they have within here, because there are systems that are expanded upon that are outside of just 3.5. So I may as well just show you. Bought a PDF. Lost Mine is going to become Red-Handed Doom. I should say Phandelver and Below will become Red-Hand of Doom. I'm keeping the Lost Mine part, and then I'm going to transition into Red Hand. You might think, well, this is an old adventure. Yeah, I get, you don't technically have to convert it, but how the hell are you going to get the stories to match? Well, it's actually really easy. You have a campaign that is focused around goblinoids, and you have a campaign that's focused around goblinoids. Not much to do there for work. You incorporate things early on so they make sense later. You incorporate elements like the PreOccupied. You incorporate them somewhere in a legend, or someone mentions it. I have Sildar Hallwinter actually talk about when he was one of the Griffin Knights or whatever they're called. He was talking about this legend, and he says, at one time I happened to see them and no one would believe me. It plays into the myth and lore elements pretty well, and it doesn't feel like you're giving them just a plot dump or a plot point. It's just a passing comment. What we do is we make them fall in love with Phandalin by introducing the characters there, making them come to life, going on adventures to help different people in the town, saving the mine, all this stuff, right? You're doing all this stuff, but you want to find ways to tie your players into the town. And I don't mean like the hooks they give you in the book. Have them be part of the hook, where you actually play the hook out in front of them. We're not going to get into that now. I will share the way I kind of prep and run and all that stuff in other videos, but for now, let's focus on fixing this mess. All right, so I decided I'm scrapping the last half, and I'm going to keep Lost Mine, but add Red-Handed Doom in there. How am I going to do it? Well, first off, let's look at locations, right? I know that in lore of Forgotten Realms, you could put Elser Vale in the, I can't remember the name of it, but the area, the waste that's far off to the east, in the northeast there. There's a place that they tell you where it technically does exist, or can exist if you wanted to. But I thought what would be better is to change the locations, right? You find like locations and you just move, like, for instance, Darlin's Ferry. Not to spoil anything, but there's a small town there that has some problems, and you eventually need to evacuate and get the citizens to safety. Phandalin makes a perfect place for that, because now you pulled your players through that. They've made connections in the town. They have friends there. They have potentially family. They have all different things that have kind of led them to this point where this is a town that they care about. I don't have to try and make them care about this new town. This is my new town that they have to try to evacuate before, this massive army comes. From there, you have Brindle, which is the town that they all evacuate to, that has better defenses, stuff like that. What's close to Phandalin that I could do that with? Helm's Hold. Perfect, because then we have a third larger city, which works for that narrative, which is Neverwinter. You have the 3 cities that are important in there for kind of the progress of the large-scale war factors in there. So to further start incorporating the NPCs, well, the PreOccupied, instead of them being these elves that are riding these giant owls, well, I want to tie it more to my campaign, and I also want to give this moral conundrum, right? So a lot of times in Forgotten Realms, your players assume that, oh, goblin means bad. Oh, orc means bad, but I want to turn that on its head. The PreOccupied are goblins. They're hobgoblins, but they're like hippie commune version of hobgoblins. I mean, except they fight, but you know what I mean. I've got some things I can start seeding over. Why bring over NPCs from Red Hand when I can just use the leaders from the different towns and cities? All that lore is already built in, and it's so easy to take the storylines that are going on that are kind of like intertwined into the main story and just have that happen between those politicians instead of these politicians. All right, so what about Azakul? Our big bad, the be-all end-all. How do we introduce him to the players without him, one, killing the players? How do we allow the players to learn that he is a bad motherfucker that you don't want to mess with? How do we introduce him in a way where they know his name? They're not going to hear it much moving through Lost Mine. They might get hints of it here and there, but when he comes back later, when he becomes a character or a force in the world later, players have met him. They know who he is. And when they hear the news that he's got this big ass army, they're going to be like, yeah, that makes sense. So what I did is I took him. He has a brother in my version. I don't know if he does in that version, but in this he does. And I did kind of a tropey thing where his brother betrays him and he's pretty much sold out to the Kragmars because the Kragmars don't want him to get all the power that he's amassing. And they have him captured as a prisoner in Kragmar Hideout. So when my players are going through Kragmar Hideout, they sneak up through the garbage chute after dealing with the wolves. They let him free. I was hoping they would. They see tied to one of the stalactites. We'll go with that. When he's tied. This weird looking dragonborn hobgoblin guy is tied to a stalagmite. Stalactite, I think I said. They see this other hobgoblin, some other goblins there, and they're like, huh, this guy that got tied up there probably would be an ally if we let him go. Well, they don't really know who this guy is yet, so they don't know how bad of an idea this is. So they come up with this elaborate plan. They free him, they cast Fog Cloud, and they're getting ready for battle. Within the first round, the freed Arzakul rushes, dives into the fog, and then he finds, they didn't know it at the time, but he picks up his holy symbol, because he's a cleric, and all of a sudden the fog cloud clears, and he looks over at Clarg, who is the bugbear that had him captured, and he's so pissed off, he just lightning bolt right at Clarg. Clarg convulses, dies, and the players are just like, what the hell just happened? To drive it home, I had Azarkul resurrect Clarg and then hit him with another lightning bolt. So at that point, the players are like, the exit's there. We're not going to stand in your way. He says, if you didn't rescue me, you'd all be dead right now. I hope I don't see you again. And then he leaves. Big dramatic exit. And they were like, blown away by that. Thought it was cool. That introduces this character, and now they have a fear and respect for this character that they wouldn't have if they just heard his name. So now we've tied this in without our players knowing that there's this whole thing in the future that's going to happen. They were introduced to the real bad guy, even though they're going to face, Glassstaff and the Spider and all these other assholes. The guy that is really the menace has already affected them in a way. So it's going to be so cool when you have the reveal at the end. When you look at Red-Handed Doom, yeah, there are a couple dungeons in there, but there are dungeons. There are large-scale battles. There are skirmishes. There are different characters that they can interact with that can have a positive outcome, a negative outcome. They can change with one choice. They can change the whole outcome of every event in the campaign. They're not stuck in a dungeon where the most that they can influence is, hey, if we pull this lever, maybe the water will go down there and then we can get the Master Sword. They're not dealing with that shit. They're dealing with real issues. They're seeing things. They're dealing with things. They're making decisions that affect the whole region. To me, that's so much more cool than the slog that is the second half of Phandelver and Below. Now, if you want me to get into detail with all the different ways I'm going to run and change Red Hand to fit with Lost Mine, just let me know in the comments. Keep it respectful. If you think that something I am doing is not smart, or you think that there's a better way, or you think that I should just try to save Lost Mine, I'm not going to. Sorry, not Lost Mine. Phandelver and Below. I'm not going to save that second half just because I'm not interested. There's nothing for me there. But please let me know your opinions. With that being said, I look forward to seeing you in the next one.